Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jane if you're new here, and this is a channel about estrangement. I am estranged from my adult son. I am not a doctor. I am not a healthcare provider. I am just a parent who is estranged. If this subject interests you, please join our community. We are growing, and we'd love to have you along. And welcome back to everybody who has been following me since day one. I so appreciate it. And everybody in between. So this video is going to be kind of hard for me to do, but bear with me as I try to explain my part in irresponsibility. And please stay until the end of this video because I think I have a bombshell for you. I didn't know when I was going to bring this up or if I was going to talk about it, but I am going to talk about it. So I will reveal what it is at the end of this video. Yes, this is a little trick that YouTubers do. So I promise I haven't and I won't do it in every video, but this one, I think it kind of warrants it. So stick with me to the end and you'll know what I'm talking about. So I've read all the comments or a lot of the comments, and I appreciate that we have people in this community watching this channel who are adult children who have, purposefully cut their parents out of their lives. And I appreciate that. All are welcome here as long as you're respectful. And we have some pretty smart adult children here who, some of them, I really feel by their comments that they would love to connect again. They would love to reconnect with their parents, but they're afraid. And I understand that too. And every situation and every family is very...
I'm just wondering if the smart, estranged adult children are the ones who want to reconnect and the rest of us aren't so smart. Did anyone else catch that? That might not be what she means. Yeah, it might be though.
Every family is very different. So I can't put anybody, even our community, we have similarities, but, we are individuals and we have individual situations. But I am glad that you are here. If you are an adult child and you cut your parents out, I'm glad that you're giving me the opportunity to explain my story and maybe to read some of the comments of the other parents, and you can see their perspective as well, because we all have our own perspective and that's all we have. But having said that, I can tell you that I am 67 years old and I am not the most responsible 67-year-old you'd ever want to meet. I am far from it. And you could put any age from 1 to 67 and any age in between referring to myself, and you could say I'm not the most responsible person at that age. I was not.
So I'm a little ahead of you. This is a part one. Crap. I don't know if I'll do part two. It depends on what her thing is at the end. If we get there, we get there. If we don't, we don't. I've seen some of her other videos. I have not watched this one. And true to theme, as I see so far with the estranged parents who create content, I have not yet seen, and I've watched a fair bit of her content where she is taking accountability or really explaining what her son's grievances are. And so to me, that's already a problematic thing. And I do see a lot of her softening, like, I'm not the most responsible. And another one, she talks about, we weren't really in a relationship, but he wanted me to make a baby blanket. So of course I did it. So she does that thing of drawing you in, like she must be a good mom because she's so soft and able to admit certain things. And wow, that's really brave and all of that. However, it still goes back to that same theme, that same thing of, why aren't you talking about what really happened? why aren't perspectives? Why aren't you talking about definitively, you have receipts, you have text messages, what your son's grievances are? The closest she came to it was where she was talking about rewriting history, where she said her son rewrote history because he said he didn't have enough food to eat, and she went food shopping every Thursday. I'm not I'm paraphrasing a little. This was literally what she said, though. So I point this out to give you a lens before you get deeply invested in what looks like is going to be a personal admission. And I'm not saying she's not going to make the admission. I'm just saying, if you're here talking about estrangement, the breakdown of that relationship, what your son's perspective was, you have his perspective, and you have not. I don't even know how many videos she has. She has a lot of them. She's never given it. One of the people that sent me her name to cover her, and by the way, it really, really helps me if you send me a link to the video you would like me to cover, because a lot of these creators have more than 50 videos, if not more than that, and it's hard for me to choose. Today I decided, you know what, I'll just take this one at random. Did my irresponsibility cause the estrangement, part 1. I looked at the title and I was like, okay, let's just try to dive into this one. I've not seen it, so this is where we are. It just helps me a lot because, you know, I only have so many hours in the day. And if you watch a video that you see it's an hour long, it took me 3 hours in editing just to piece together what I watched with, you know, my video. So the editing isn't about taking out my glitches and things like that. The editing, see, I'll leave that in as an example. The editing is really about, you know, coordinating what I'm watching here in front of me on the computer and placing it over here so that you can see it and all of that. So anything that anyone can do to save me a little time, I really, really, really appreciate. And all right, let's continue to get into her.
Did that harm my son emotionally, physically? I don't know. I'm beginning to rethink this because of some of the comments that I've read. So let's go back. I'm also realizing that this channel has kind of become the Jane Chronicles. And I don't mind that. It's cathartic, I think, for myself. I do get, you know, a little nervous about telling things that have happened to me and my family, but it's all water under the bridge. You know, I can't change what happened. So I will give you some background here, some more background. I know I've given you some. So when my son was born, and he is my only child for you new people, you know, he's 37 now. So when he was born, I lived with his father. We were not married. We fought a lot. We were either getting along great or we fought like cat and dog, and there didn't seem to be any kind of happy medium there. And we lived like that when we first met and moved in together. And, you know, I had never lived with a man. I lived with my parents until I was 27 years old. I know, right? So I'm sure I'll get some comments about that too. I was an only child. Yes, my parents did spoil me. I don't know. Yes, they did spoil me. My life as a child was pretty easy, except that I was shy, and being shy can be painful in its own right. So it wasn't all that easy, but my home life was good. So was I equipped to move in with this man? No, I was not. Why did I choose this man? I don't know. I loved him. I was crazy about him. So, you know, after about 1.5 years of partying, maybe a couple of years of partying, and I mean, you know, drinking a lot and fighting a lot when we drank, and but having a lot of fun in between, I guess you could say. We set up house. We both worked. And we fought over everything. We fought over money. We fought over each other flirting with other people or whatever, same crap that everybody does. And I had been told in my early 20s that
Same crap that everybody does. Everybody fight over stuff like that? I just think that's interesting. I mean, money, people, that's a really common thing that ends up in divorce. But I kind of feel like she's really, in a way, normalizing excessive drinking and what was probably really loud arguing, screaming, yelling. Like, does that feel like that to you? That's what this feels like to me. This feels like a setup for the normalization of something that was her normal, that her son was born into, which foundationally is problematic. I'm just going to put that out there. So, okay.
in my early 20s that the doctor didn't think I could ever have children. So I lived with that knowledge of probably never having kids. So lo and behold, he wasn't an accident. I started noticing the babies that were being born in my boyfriend's family. And, that mama instinct, that mother maternal instinct, whatever you want to call it, was calling to me. So I stopped using birth control. And of course I told him I didn't think, it probably wouldn't happen. But it did. And it happened pretty quick. And I got pregnant. And we had our son. And when my son was we had fought and gotten back together. He had moved out, moved back in, moved out, moved back in. When I had my son, I decided.
So, and many of us have done this, myself included. You chose to have a baby with a person in a very problematic relationship. And this is the first time I've heard her talk about this. And I'm wondering if she's going to relate it back to that being her son's foundation and she could see the harm that it's done him. I want to point it out because I'm wondering if she's going to go in that direction at all. This will say a lot about her ability and willingness to take accountability. And whenever I hear, my perspective and their perspective and all of this and all of that, I hear I'm not really taking accountability because of the fact that just because somebody else has a different perspective doesn't mean it didn't happen the way that they perceived it. The way they feel about it, particularly when we're talking about our children, is the way that it happened. That becomes fact for them in their body, in their soul, in their core memories, in the way that their life is altered, positive or negative, right? And we have to leave space for that. And the reason we have to leave space for that is, one, it's important for us to have the ability to take accountability for how they felt about something that we did that might have been coming from a perfectly good place, or we didn't look at it that way. The way they perceived it is what shaped and formed them because they were in their formative years. So perception matters a whole lot less in terms of right and wrong. And that's what I hear in the way that not just Jane, but other people speak about, how they raise their children. I can look at things where my daughter said, this really hurt me. I'm talking about my eldest daughter because we were estranged over 20 years ago. I can look at that and go, well, yeah, I know what I was dealing with at that time. And I can also go, but that's a me problem, not a her problem. She was in her formative years. She was a child. This is how it impacted her. That's the only fact I need to know. And until an estranged parent or a parent in general, maybe moving towards that, can acknowledge that, you have to be able to acknowledge that in order to create safety and provide repair. It doesn't make you a horrible person. It actually makes you a horrible person if you're unwilling to take accountability, because that's a choice. It doesn't make you a horrible person because you did something that caused harm to your child. I'm not talking about, abusing your child, that sort of thing. That makes you a horrible fucking person. I'm talking about, things that we did, things that we said that live in a certain place for our kids and things like that. If you're not willing to help to heal that wound that you created because you want to live in your own perception, well, you're going to be living there on your own with the people who are your echo chamber. Is that more valuable to you than your own adult offspring? If it is, well, go for it. And that's the theme that I see with a lot of the estranged parents. That's more valuable to them. And yet they say we can't cope and we have thin skins, but they can't take accountability and we can. Who sounds like they can cope better and have who sounds like their skin is, normal, not healthy, I'm not talking thick or thin, just, yeah. Okay.
I decided, I was 29, so I wasn't really real young.
Oh, that reminded me. That's the other thing I was going to say about that. We're not talking about a 19, 20-year-old girl here. We are talking about somebody who sounds like they were more sheltered, given the fact that, like, this was it sounds like her first love at 27, not first person ever. That's not what she said, but like the person she fell in love with and moved in with and was building a life with. Like, she sounds like she was a bit of a late bloomer in that regard. At the same time, 30, 40 years ago, did we really live with people? I feel like we married people. We didn't really live with them. So that's interesting. You chose to make a baby with someone that you're not married to. I'm not judging that. I'm putting that in the context of time, okay? And you knew that the relationship was volatile and you were 29 years old. So you're a fully formed adult, and that is the choice that you made. And is this where she's talking about irresponsibility? Is this where she's going to go and recognize, wow, that was a bad decision, not having my child, right? I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Okay.
I was 29, and I wanted my son to have a good life. I knew fighting and drinking were not going to be part of that life. That's not a good life to have around children. So I told my boyfriend, you got to clean up your act or get out. Well, he just loved partying, and the way he worked, he was in construction. So they'd get off around 3 and they'd go to the bar, and, he'd come home. I was stone sober because I was taking care of a baby. I didn't go back to work right away. I stayed home for a while, gave up a good job, but I don't regret that at all. But long story short, when my son was about 8 or 9 months old, we broke up. We got back together maybe 6 months to a year later when my father got very ill. He moved back in. And I think him and my son really bonded, because I'll never forget when he left again.
I think him and my son really bonded. I think he really bonded with our son. There's a property aspect to that maybe I'm reading lots of things into it. I don't think so, though. And it also makes me wonder, what was her environment really like with her parents? Was there drinking? Was that normalized? Was there some magical thinking, oh, we'll be a family, I'll make a baby, he'll stop drinking? And I have some problems around this because of her age, because she was a fully formed adult. I think if she had been, young and dumb, as I like to, well, that's how I referred to myself in my 20s, my early 20s, my 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, young and dumb sort of thing. But, 29 years old, making a baby with someone with a drinking problem. Yeah, maybe there was a trauma bond in there, lots of moving pieces. Can we just say out loud, I think it would change my perspective on her greatly if she had by this point said out loud, I fucked up. I made a baby with someone who wasn't equipped to be a father, who was an alcoholic maybe, or had lots of drinking. Something that shows some accountability as the story is going on. And my son, her property, I wanted a baby. I think that's indicative of a problem.
When he left again, and that was the last time, because we were, again, kind of toxic for each other. I'm not going to lie. We were. I'd bring out my son in the morning from his crib, and he looked for him. His eyes widened, and he looked around for his father, who would always greet him, tickling his tummy or talking to him or doing whatever he would do with him. And he did that every day for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then one day he came out and he didn't do it anymore. He knew he wasn't there. I don't know if that did something to his psyche. Maybe. Maybe it did.
It's doing something to my psyche. It's making her emotional, and she doesn't come the fuck on. Oh, okay. I'm yelling. Well, and in English, I'm in Italy, so neighbors have no idea what I'm on about, I'm sure. It's not her fault that this man left. She couldn't control his decisions. It is her accountability, her responsibility that she made a baby with someone who's unstable. Yeah. But come on, let's not cover the sun with our thumb. Of course it had an impact. Your son was obviously so bonded to his daddy that he noticed his absence by your own admission. So let's at least be honest about that and say, I know that had a terrible impact. Also, what was your impact, though? Are we going to talk about that?
I don't know. So there's that. I'll never forget that. It just, maybe it meant nothing when they're infants like that. I don't know. You know, he was about 1.5 years old at that time, maybe. So he was still little, but I don't know, you know.
How many of you, when she said infant, pictured an infant, not a, basically a toddler at 1.5 years? Okay. Just wondering.
I wish I could have made it work with his father. I really do. And the strange thing was, when we finally broke up and he met this other woman and they got married pretty quick. She got pregnant again pretty quick. We became friends. I never thought that would happen in a million years. But we became really good friends in co-parenting. And he became responsible. I mean, maybe this woman helped. This woman did not drink. And she already had 2 twin daughters. And they were about 8 or 9 when he met her. And at first I didn't get along with her well because I think she was intimidated by me. Once she realized I didn't want him back, we became friends too. So it was kind of like a great situation, I thought, you know. And his father would see him from time to time and quite often, and everything seemed great. But then a few years down the road.
Which is it? From time to time or quite often? Was it consistent? Was it inconsistent? Did your child enjoy the stability of a relationship with his father? Something's off to me.
Me and my mom and my son moved to a small town. I wanted to get out of the city. I wanted him to grow up in a good neighborhood where there wasn't a lot of crime. My car had gotten broken into. We lived again in an apartment and there were drugs big time in that apartment. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to raise a child around that. So we moved to a small town. And it was, maybe 40 miles away. He didn't see his father much after that. I mean, we saw him, but it was different. So maybe that had something to do with it.
You fucking think? So the father stabilized and you became really good friends with him, really close and all these things. And he saw his son, but did he see his son? Consistently not. And you made the decision because of where you were living. You wanted more safety. I understand that, but hold on, stay with me here. To move the child so far away that it made it more difficult. Like 40 miles is, I don't even know how much time. Did you have a car? Were you guys making arrangements to meet halfway? It sounds to me like your priority was really what you wanted and not what would have been best for your child, which was to have contact with a father who had stabilized and was no longer drinking. Could you not have downsized or moved somewhere that was safe enough, still in the city, away from those influences, rather than 40 miles away? And if it was 40, was it really 40 or was it 60? Like something is so wrong with this story to me. I'm having problems with it. And because of the possessiveness around her son, my son, he bonded with my son. It just makes me feel some kind of way around that, about that, not around that, about that. Like I think that she had a problem sharing. That's what it feels like to me. There's something underlying there.
But where my irresponsibility lies, I think, in number one, maybe not fighting hard enough to get along with his father and knowing.
What the fuck? Did she not just say that they were really good friends? Contradicting, liar, liar, like she's lying. I think she's lying. Which is the truth? Is anyone else out there? Please comment in as confused as I am right now. Did she not rewatch this video? And so this is the thing with her, and somebody sent me her, and I can't remember if I said it in the beginning of this video or not, because I've tried to shoot it 3 times now and only got 3 minutes in of those 3 times. So here I am almost halfway through. And again, it's my first time watching this video. Somebody sent me her name, and they were like, she seems so sweet and nice. I think what that person was clicking onto is the inconsistencies without breaking it down the way that I am, which is very understandable. And she does. She's soft and she's this and she's that. Covert comes to mind. Hard to nail down comes to mind. Somebody who, if you said something to them, would melt down into an emotional, hysterical outburst comes to mind. That is the vibe and the feeling that I'm getting. I'm not speaking fact. I don't know her. I'm just telling you what I see in her demeanor. And again, I mean, I've made over 100 videos at this point. I was looking the other day of the estranged parents who create content. And I see the patterns. I see it in my practice as a therapist. I see it in my own family background and things like that as well. I'm seeing it though, and I'm categorizing it, and my brain is wrapping around it, and I've become much more, I think, adept of going, there's the spot, there's the language, there's the thing, because when you start to see the patterns start to, stick in your brain. So yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness.
And knowing that a 2-parent family is better than a 1-parent family for the most part. And then there was me being a single parent and wanting to buy my son things that I really couldn't afford. And when he got older, maybe 12, 13, we had the electric cut off a couple of times. And of course I'd pay it right away. I mean, you can't have, it was warmer weather. It wasn't winter time, but it did happen. And he got angry at me. He came home from school one time. He was about 15 or 16. And I had candles set up. And I thought it was kind of funny because, number one, I had already paid it. I paid it when I came home from work. I didn't always check my mail every day. We had a little post office that was, I could stop as I drove in to our complex. Did I stop every day? No. I was tired. I had worked all day. I just wanted to go home. To this day, I don't check my mail every day. I'm 67 and I live alone. I don't check my mail every day. The difference is nowadays you can pay your bills online, and I do that now. Did I do that then? No. There really was.
Okay, but we know when the electric bill is coming, regardless of being online, regardless, you hear the excuses, regardless of, checking the mail, electric bill, it's due on the 15th of every month, or maybe the 17th, but they're in the pocket. This is really about, and she said, did my irresponsibility cause the estrangement? That's a part of it. It's not her irresponsibility, it's the instability that she created for her son. She took him away from his father. She took him away from the other half of stability that he would have been able to experience. And I have a feeling, because of the contrast that his father probably would have been able to offer him, she didn't want him to see that. She had her own demons. I've had those. I provided instability. I mean, we weren't getting lights cut off, but we moved a few times because I wasn't paying rent on time. Not a downright eviction, pretty close to it. One time I did get evicted. Yeah, I was like, not evictions. And then, yeah, no, I did get evicted once. My daughter wasn't there at the time, thank goodness, to go through that part of it. It was because I was financially irresponsible. It was because I had a very bad relationship with money. And I have talked to my kids about that in their adulthood. And I no longer suffer that way. I have figured that out. I have gone to therapy. I have done the things. I'm not saying I'm better than her. I'm just kind of pointing out that a lot of us struggle financially. We struggle with lots of things in terms of stability and things like that. My mother used to steal my babysitting money. I was like 10, 11, 12 years old constantly. I really learned just to spend what I had. I never learned value around money. I also didn't learn that I was valuable enough to create my own stability. There's so many moving pieces in there. I will never try to escape from the fact that the moving that I did and the fact that I wasn't saving money and doing, if I had done things better financially, we probably would have lived in the same flat throughout my kids' school career. We stayed in the same neighborhood. I'm trying to think of how many times we moved. I think it was 4 times. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Within the same neighborhood. That is instability. That is upheaval for our children. Even though it was the same neighborhood, never changed their schools and all the things, it's still, I mean, I've talked to my kids about it. They're like, yeah, it sucked when that happened. We did not like that. It made us angry at you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. You know, like, what am I going to, I can't undo it. I can own it. Forgot about the eviction. That's embarrassing. And it's the truth. So it is what it is. She's sugarcoating and she's like, maybe that caused it, maybe this. He was angry that how many times? Was this a consistent thing and something that you weren't working to make better? And she blames it on him. I wanted to buy him things. She blames it on him. That's what it feels like to me. I'm so fucking frustrated with her already. No. And by the way, I'm drawing over the eviction. I'm still very embarrassed. And I am going to leave it in this video. And I want you to know that I feel some kind of way about it. I did not expect to talk about that. Thankfully, my 2 older children didn't go through that one. And unfortunately, my youngest did from a distance. Like I said, she wasn't home when it happened. She was at her dad's for those few days. And I got settled right away in another place and everything. But fuck, that's embarrassing. Whew.
There really wasn't, it was long enough ago where I know a lot of you remember that, you had to write a paper check. They were starting to do bill payments over the phone. And I did do that with cable a few times. And the cable, well, let's talk about the cable. My son wanted cable, and I get that. And we had that shut off more than a couple of times. And then I would feel bad, and whenever I got some money, I would pay the cable and keep it on as long as I could. But I was a single mother. I wasn't making that much money. And no, I wasn't getting child support. His father would give me money from time to time, and that was good. But I did not take him to court because he already had his first wife taking him to court for child support. He had a son when I met him. And then he had a child with me, and then he had 2 more children with his second wife. So there's that.
Does she not feel like the victim of everyone, including her son? My son wanted cable, so I tried to keep it on. I did the best I could. I wasn't getting child support. I wanted to be a better person than my ex-husband's, ex-boyfriend's, baby daddy's first wife. Um, there's a theme here. This is not about her looking at what caused the estrangement or taking accountability. It's not. She's framing it that way, but she's deflecting and she's blaming her son for the fact that they had these bills, kind of thing. Like, it's absurd to me. This is absurd.
Don't crucify this man. He's helped me more than I can tell you over the years. And he has a huge heart. Was he the most responsible person? No. And I think he would admit that. He actually died last year, and he died down here in Florida. And that was extreme.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because he's dead. He can't defend himself. He can't set the record straight. Doesn't that just fucking figure? I can't with her.
It's extremely hard for me because I always loved him. I always loved him. He was the only man I ever loved. But I digress, okay? So no, I wasn't the most responsible parent. But I did the best I could. And
I bet you think it's about the best I could. No, it's not. Her son, and she's accused him of rewriting history, said that he remembers going hungry in childhood. And she's like, I went food shopping every Thursday. Oh, but if you had such financial instability, could there have also been food insecurity where, yeah, you went shopping, but you bought like a bag of rice to last a week? That can mean so many things. And it definitely could mean and translate into him being left hungry. And just because maybe he got enough nourishment kind of thing, also school lunches maybe and that sort of thing, doesn't mean that his reality isn't correct. You know what I mean? Like, well, I'm going with his reality anyway. Why would somebody say that? Why would somebody say to their parent, I remember going hungry? That's a very specific memory. So she was financially irresponsible, and it wouldn't track that maybe sometimes she didn't have enough money for food. I don't know. And also, what were you spending the money on? Outside of cable that you weren't paying consistently and getting on and off and on and off, the electric bill, like, where was the money going? Oh, your son wanted things. The math is not mathing.
We had a lot of fun. We went to the beach in the summer. I made sure we went to the beach in the summer, and we'd stay a few days. And, we always had food. And this is why it hurts me so much when my son says he went hungry as a child, because I had 2 grocery stores really near my work, and I got paid every week. First thing was the rent. Second was gas in my car. And third was food. And I don't care what was owed. I made sure that we had food in that refrigerator at all times. Good food.
Also, I just kind of want to go backwards a little bit because remember I said she's the victim of everyone and she sacrifices and all the things. The sacrifice thing is my new word on this today. I didn't say it back there. She gave up a really good job to have her son. So that too, like her income wasn't the same because she had him. This is how I'm really feeling a theme here.
That was just how I felt. I just felt that was, now, could I have maybe stretched things farther? Maybe, but I didn't want to go hungry. I didn't want to look in the fridge and not see food. And he's growing. Children grow. I wasn't growing. I was in my 40s by then, 30s, 40s. I wasn't growing. If you're going to grow this way, you're not going to grow that way. But children need food. They need milk. They need protein. They need everything. They need fruits and vegetables. So I made sure that was always there. And I am proud of that fact, that I did do that, regardless of what he says now. And it's funny how he doesn't bring up you know.
Did you see a flash of anger? I saw a flash of anger. Yeah. And listen, be angry. I'm not judging people for their emotions. I'm just saying, like, the mask slipped a teeny bit. She was all soft and all the things, and you just kind of saw the bite come out. It's significant. I think it's significant.
um, the things that I know I did irresponsible of, maybe managing my money better where, I could make sure that, and the electric was always paid. It got paid one way or another. And, I even got a new car. I got a good deal on the car. It was kind of a new used car. It had 6,000 miles on it, but where I lived, we needed a car. So I made sure I had a car and I made the car payment on that. So having said that, I did the best I could. To this day, I am not Miss Responsible. I've moved quite a few times and I have gotten myself in some credit card debt. Right now, I'm in some credit card debt. I am working to get out of it. YouTube is helping. I only get my Social Security. That's all I get. But here comes the bombshell, people.
So this is the one area where I'm going to have some compassion for her, because I think a lot of us have a lot of struggle with self-sabotage, creating our own chaos, and money is a working theme that a lot of people have difficulty with. It has taken me, I'm 60 years old. I'm proud to say I'm not in debt. And it has taken me up until the last 5 years to really get my finances in order to the point where I don't worry about how I'm going to pay rent and things like that. And that shouldn't be something I'm learning at 55 years old around that time, right? That should be something that I learned growing up and all the things. I did model bad financial behavior in front of my children. My son, fortunately, I don't know where he got it from. Probably his dad, like, because my ex-husband is very financially literate. So they had one parent who was really good in that way and one that sucked completely. Also, going back to my eviction that I hadn't thought about, I was going through deep depression during that time leading up to it. So for which I completely, I was like, what else was going on around that time? 4 months prior, I was in a depression. I'm not excusing my financial irresponsibility at all, because if I had not been financially irresponsible, that would not have happened. A contributing factor was the fact that I was going through menopause, put on a bunch of weight, and I was going through a huge depression, and I didn't know it at the time. So for like 4 months leading up to it, like really, really, really struggling a lot. So now I feel a little less embarrassed and still embarrassed all at the same time. Anyway, it is what it is. I may talk about that in another video though, because I clearly have something sticky in there to process around. I'm 60 and I'm late to the game on forming, retirement and all of that because of my financial illiteracy, irresponsibility, and all the things. I understand where she is. I get that. And I want to hold space for that. So just like I go after her for not taking accountability and all of that, I can also hold a space for the fact that this is something happened to her that created a situation that unfortunately she's not getting the help that she should have gotten around. And I still have a great deal of difficulty with her covert behavior and her unwillingness to take accountability and playing the victim of everyone kind of thing. And can also recognize that this is a person who has, you know, significant issues that a lot of us that are trauma survivors are left with. And it leads me to question, okay, how idyllic was, she didn't use that word, my word, was your childhood? How stable was it? How good was it? Did you do the love when marrying somebody who had, issues with drinking at that time? There's something wrong. Like why would somebody from a healthy environment end up this way unless something went sideways? And she probably doesn't even know it. It doesn't excuse the fact, though, that when we become adults and we become parents, we need to prioritize our children and do better and continue to work to do better. And she's had ample opportunities to validate her son, to take accountability, to come to the table. I think he's been pretty specific. That's what some of her videos lead me to believe. And she still doesn't do it. So, I think that there's attention seeking. She needs to be his center kind of thing also at play here. There's moving pieces. There's definitely moving pieces. I can see how somebody watching this video from the outside would feel like, oh, she wasn't that bad kind of thing. Well, whether or not she was or wasn't, she is enough to the point where her own son doesn't want to be in a relationship with her.
Here comes the bombshell, people. Get ready for it. I always drank socially. I always had control over.
Okay, before I get there, also, because someone's going to go menopause, I was 38 and I was done by 40. Just to clarify.
I always had control over my drinking. But later in life, I was about late 40s, maybe early 50s. I think I was about 50. My son got into some trouble, and it was over a girl, and it got bad. It got really bad.
Okay, so I just want to piece together what she's doing right now. She sounded like she was going to make an admission that she had a drinking problem. And is that where some of that money was going, instead of the light bill, instead of the cable, instead of the things, instead of the food? Like, was that part of the landscape? And is that why your son was angry? Because he came home and things were turned off and there was alcohol in the cabinets? She's trying to paint it as social. I am getting a vibe off of that. But the thing that I really want to call your attention to right now is the fact that she just made this bombshell admission, and now she's about to throw her son under the bus and smear campaign him from his teenage years. Pay attention to how, oh, my compassion just ended for her. Fucking hell. Ugh. Pay attention to, I know I'm growling. What's wrong with me? I'm frustrated. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to that. Because all this video is it's not my fault. And I'm going to make things that sound like admissions, but not really. And now I'm going to smear campaign my adult son by bringing up his history. This is not okay. And this is why he will never, I'll be shocked as shit, have a relationship with her again. She has granddaughters. Great legacy, Grandma. Awesome. They're going to know something about their father that may or may not be true, that might be embellished, elaborated, what's the word? Not embellished, exaggerated, that they would never know otherwise unless he chose to tell them. And that's up to him, because it's his story, not yours. My hair is on fucking fire. Snarky Sparky is off the charts. This is not okay. So the purpose of this video, did my irresponsibility cause the estrangement? Bull fucking shit. The purpose of this video was to alleviate you from responsibility and allow get other people to feel bad for you. I am furious right now.
He doesn't take any responsibility. To this day, he blames this on me. But I know this was him. He broke a couple of restraining orders. And when somebody is 18 and 19 and 20 and they have their own vehicle and they have their own job, yes, he lived at home. I couldn't stop him from going out. I didn't know. I was hoping he was doing the right thing, but apparently he wasn't all the time doing the right thing. And long story short, I had bored people at work.
He blames her. So why? Does he blame her for letting him to go out? I can't even speak. Does he blame her for that? Or does he blame her because of the lack of emotional support and lessons taught and all that? Does he blame her because she was an absentee alcoholic parent? I don't know if she was an alcoholic. I'm just saying, if she's drinking and not paying the light bill, and does he blame her because of the way that he was raised by her and the lack of meeting his emotional needs, or because she didn't take the car keys away? Do you see the lack of specific information? She is doing what these estranged parents do that create content, that purposeful, misleading, bob and weave, I'm the victim of everyone, covert, talking really softly, blah, blah, blah behavior. They're all the fucking same. The moments may be different. The theme is the same theme over and over and over and over and over and over again.
I had bored people at work about, my son with the violin, and I don't know what to do. I don't want him going to jail. I don't want him in trouble. I don't want him to have a record. He's got his whole life ahead of him. Nobody wants that for their child. And he was doing these stupid things over this girl that he was, puppy love, whatever you want to call it. They're very strong emotions. When that first love, whether you're, 15 or 20 or anywhere in between, they're very strong emotions. And I know that from being that age myself. But, anywho, me and his father started seeing each other again. He was divorced from his second wife and living alone. And, I would go visit him on the weekends, and we would go out and we would drink, and I could forget my problems, and we ended up living together again and getting back together. And my son moved out. He moved out, at the same time because he found this lake house that he wanted to live with his friends. And I guess he thought he was making enough money. I guess he was. So it all happened pretty quick. But over the next couple of years.
You guess he was, or he was? He moved out. He went into adulthood. He left you with his father, who really wasn't much of a part of his life, and you two could drink your asses off. He escaped. I guess he was. Even the vagueness around that. She doesn't want to paint him as being responsible at all.
My drinking got out of hand, and I became an alcoholic. And I am an alcoholic to this day, because anybody knows once you're an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. But I have been sober for 8 years now. And thank God every day for my sobriety. Now, how did that affect my son?
So she just left us on a cliffhanger. Fuck.
Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about, this is going to be part 2 of how my irresponsibility in past years affected my son, and maybe had something to do with the estrangement. I don't know. It could have. I guess I'll never know for sure. How are you all doing today? I hope you're all doing well and coping. I've got my Halloween fall themed pillows. They make me happy.
Please like me. Please forget all the things that I said. I got my I got my book. Yeah, come on. That ship has sailed, for me anyway.
Okay, so I know I told you about my drinking, which did happen later in life.
I do want to say I commend her and respect her and admire anybody who is able to get sober and, being sober for 8 years. I do, as much as I'm going after her, I also want to give credit where credit is due and that sort of thing. I do feel like there's a lot of pieces missing. I feel like not talking about what her drinking was like while she was bringing up her son. She only talks about the part where she stopped drinking. And like, was that throughout like her pregnancy, when he was an infant, not a year and a half old? Like, there's a lot of pieces in this that are missing. And I think that there is at least a subconscious strategy of, I'm just going to give you enough to make it look like I'm admitting something without actually filling out the story and doing the accountability thing. That's how I feel. I have been through a range of emotions with her. Holy smokes.
And my son was basically out of the house, but did it affect him? Yes. So I wanted to talk about that first. How my drinking affected him. I was living with his dad and my son was living on his own. And I was drinking a lot. And the weekends, I just drank more. I went to work every day, Monday through Friday.
So my son was a young adult after going through this thing that I outed him for this girl and all of that. He managed to move out. He got in his own place to live, and he had zero support system because he had two parents who were alcoholics. That didn't affect him at all, I'm sure. Nah, why would it? That's just crazy. And that certainly wouldn't have no impact on the relationship you had with him. This maybe and might have is such bullshit.
Friday, but when I came home, boy, I started banging them back. And it was a progression. You know, anybody that knows an alcoholic knows it's a disease of progression. Sometimes slowly, sometimes fast. And, you know, I was gaining some ground there for sure. And this was a Sunday afternoon. And his father, you know, a lot of times would take it in stride, but sometimes not. And he had some choice words for me on this particular Sunday. So, you know, I did some errands early on a Sunday, and then I went right to the package store. In New England, we call liquor stores package stores. So if you want to know what kind of store it was a liquor store. And, you know, in those days, and I think even to today, there's certain stores that don't have alcohol. Now, I live in Florida, and boy, every store has alcohol. You can go in a Target or a Walmart, there's alcohol. But up north, it wasn't like that. So I digress. Not that that's important, but I thought it was kind of interesting. So anyway, so after I did my errands that Sunday, I went right to the package store, which was normal for me. Thank Lord, not anymore, but it was normal. Went to the package store. Sometimes I get some, you know, some drinks for my ex. I was nice, you know, we could sit, watch movies is what we usually did on a Sunday afternoon. My ex was a very good cook, and he would cook a big dinner usually on Sunday.
Sometimes I was nice. I got my ex some drinks. No, you know, I mean, look, what does an alcoholic really like? Somebody else to drink with. So was that being nice or just, you know, it's out of place. It just felt like an out of place remark. She, again, trying to paint herself like this really wonderful person and, you know, cover the sun with her thumb again. So I'm just stopping it because it's these little bits and pieces of the way that she tells the story to paint her character as a way to distract you from actually listening to the important pieces in the story. That's what's striking me.
Okay, so, you know, we'd sit around. It was a very low-key day, and I started drinking. And I don't know if maybe I hadn't eaten much that day or I just drank more. I really don't know. But it was about 4:00 in the afternoon, and I literally passed out on the couch.
I'm also going to call attention to the fact that when we are drinking, our memory is not reliable. So is she telling this from her perspective or from what her son might have said? Because I'm wondering if it's going to be a story that includes her son's experience, I want to get away from perspective, with this particular Sunday. I mean, look, I don't drink a lot. Sometimes I do, though. Sometimes I'll go out on a Friday night and I'm letting my hair hang down. And sometimes I'll go out on a Friday night. Friday is my day that I usually go out, my evening that I usually go out, and I'll have one glass. It just depends on the situation. I come from alcoholic stock. I'm very afraid of that pre-wiring that I was born with. My children are all aware, and my grandchildren, that we come from my adult offspring. We come from alcoholics. My grandmother was a social, highly functioning hostess with the mostest alcoholic. And so like I don't have, I mean, there's empty wine bottles in here that came with, you can't see that came with the flat because I'm at another Airbnb. I've been living in Airbnbs. I had an apartment for a while, for the last 2.5 years, not because of financial instability, by the way, but because I'm traveling and that sort of thing. I don't drink alone. Like, I'm very aware of all those things. I'm also equally aware that on the Fridays that I let my hair hang down, you know, I have a pretty good memory, and I'm also sure that there's probably things I won't remember or see the same way as I would, or evaluate them the same way as I would if I had no drinks. Can we all agree with that? You don't have to agree, but if you don't, I want to know how it is you think that someone who's drinking would have a spot on memory, because I just don't think so.
And there was a knock at the door. Apparently, I didn't know. And my son, who didn't usually stop by like that, he happened to stop by. And I heard about this after the fact. He came over to me and he tried to wake me up, and I wasn't waking up, and he thought I was dead. And he ran into the kitchen yelling to his father, "I don't think she's breathing." And he came back and he said, "No, she's just drunk. She passed out." So I don't know what kind of a visit they had, but he left. And I guess I came to a couple hours later. Now, my son was at this time early to mid-20s, I guess. And my ex was disgusted with the whole situation, which I don't blame him. And he said, "Your son thought you were dead because you wouldn't wake up." And he said, "You got to start thinking about doing something about your drinking." And I knew he was right. Now, I know that's a horrible situation, and it's got to be one of my low points of being a mother, right? And I wasn't even acknowledging, at the time, I wasn't even acknowledging that I was an alcoholic. I wasn't, you know, and we tend to do that until we are ready to get help and ready to acknowledge that it's ruining our life, it's ruining our health, it's affecting our loved ones, it's affecting every aspect of your life. Until you are ready to do that, there's no reaching that person, you know, and I felt horrible, but it certainly didn't stop me from drinking. At least at that time, it did not. So that's a bad story, right? I know. It's a very bad story. So there's that. And then there's me going after his father and his daughter left. His daughter didn't really live with us, but she was going to come and live with us because it was a whole big thing with her and her mom. But my ex decided no, that was not going to be a place where he was going to have his daughter live with a drunken woman. And him and his daughter, he chose his daughter, and rightfully so, they left. And they ended up moving to Georgia for a while. So I was alone, and my drinking went from bad to worse. And I kept going to rehabs and kept coming home, and I couldn't stay sober. I would stay sober for a week or two, but that was about it. And my son was very understanding. He got mad at me too, but he kept saying, you can do this. You got this. Well, finally I went into long-term treatment.
So through all of that, her son did not give up on her and tried to help her. And here she is making a video, smear campaigning him about his teenage years that has absolutely no relevance. That's what I find so striking about her. That to me tells a huge story, that she will use anything she can to deflect away from her behavior, including not putting cover over her own son. And by cover, I don't mean covering up. I mean, like, our instinct is usually to protect our children of all ages up into adulthood, all the ages, and not disparage them in front of anyone, let alone the entire internet, right? I don't want to allow her off the hook for that, because, you know, she's talking about her struggles and everything. And it goes back, did my irresponsibility cause the estrangement? Oh, it goes so far beyond that. So far beyond her irresponsibility.
I was getting it. I was getting sober. I was staying sober for a significant amount of time. My son seemed very happy about it. He had a new girlfriend. This was the first love. Well, no, actually it wasn't. He had a first love when he was in his teens, I believe. And that was a lot of trouble that he got into. I think I touched on that on another video or two.
You think? Actually, there's even another video where she talks about it. This is her claim to fame over him. This is the one thing that she, like she has something tangible she can use to, you know, darken his character. He was a teenager. Fuck off with that. Snarky Sparky. Hair on fire too. I'd like to, no, not going to say it.
But this was like an adult relationship, and he was in love. And she was a very nice girl. And he brought her on Christmas Eve to my recovery home. I was living with like 20 other women, and it was great. We went out to dinner, and she was just adorable. And I was so happy for him. And everything was...
Wow, that's a really big deal. So his son brought his significant other, his girlfriend, to see her in that recovery program, to spend Christmas Eve with her. Like, for him, that had to, like, does that not speak of a son who wanted his mother's approval and a relationship with her and like all the things? Like, wow. To me, that's a pretty big deal. And I would think that it would have had to be like so hard too. Like, I look back and I think, if my mother, the devil, I'm a little snarky sparky in that area as well today. She's just been on my mind in a weird way lately. I think it's because, well, not in a weird way. It's February and my stepfather passed away because of her on the 16th. And I've been dragging around all day. Today is the anniversary of my biological father's death. And it's not that I forgot it, it's that I wasn't paying attention to the date. And I've been dragging around and raw all freaking day. And, you know, the body keeps the score. Ay. Okay. Yeah. Anywho, like, if my mother was in that situation and I was dating someone that I wanted to, you know, build a future with, or, you know, I mean, I'm assuming something that maybe I shouldn't assume. I know the son is married now. I don't know if he's talking about the same woman or not. I would be too embarrassed to do that. There's no way I would have done that. I just would have been too scared of the person I was with looking at me like there was something wrong with me because I internalized everything as being my fault. So I just find that really interesting.
Great. And I'll always remember that Christmas Eve. It was, I was so thankful that I had a chance to get sober, and I got some really good help, and I got some counseling, and I had camaraderie with other women that were going through the same thing of alcoholism and drug addiction. And my son was working. He was living, in the Boston area, and he had met this girl who lived, or I should say woman, who lived in the Boston area. And everything just seemed to be going right. And I kind of sat back and said, phew, I have a chance to rebuild my life, and I didn't lose my son. And that's what I thought. And I was right for a while. Until years later when he met this other woman. But anyway, he got very protective of me, for sure. Very protective. He didn't think I could get the train and from Western Mass to Eastern Mass. And he didn't think I.
This other woman who he's probably married to now that he's made babies with, I'm pretty sure he has 2 daughters. It's about to be the other woman's fault because you hear the way that she's worded that. So why are you even talking about girlfriends of the past? What's the point of that? Oh, because you could get along with those girlfriends? Well, the first one, the puppy love one, is just to create the smear campaign of him being a stalker. Well, there was a restraining order, so I guess it might have been for stalking. We don't know. We don't even know if that's true. We don't know. We don't know. And the next one that he was in love with, she's decided, right? Was great enough to go with him to see her, in this facility and, check her out and go and have New Year's Eve dinner, Christmas Eve dinner and all of that. And so if that's when she got sober 8 years ago, that would have been 2018. I think she said he's 37, so he would have been in his late 20s. And then that relationship didn't work out, as relationships often don't. And then he met this woman. Words matter.
I can do that. But he was like, no, you'll get lost. Now, I am horrible with directions. I am. I've always been like that. I can get lost in a paper bag. But, so what happened was I started taking the Peter Pan bus from Western Mass to Eastern Mass, and he'd pick me up at the bus terminal in downtown Boston. Well, they have a train. It's a purple train. My granddaughter used to call it, she's going to take the purple train. And it's really kind of cool. It goes to all the outskirts towns of Boston. It runs very frequently, I think even on the weekends. But Monday through Friday, a lot of commuters take it. And it's a very nice ride, actually. So I kept saying, I can do that. No, you can't do that. You'll get lost, blah, blah, blah. So if you, what am I trying to say? Fast forward 5 years. He already knew the other woman, right? The woman that did not like me, didn't want any part of me.
He already knew the other woman. Before the rest of that statement, what did you think? That she was the other woman, right? That didn't like her. Oh, gosh.
And I have my new granddaughter. And she's my firstborn granddaughter. And she was about 8 months old. So his attitude, and I understand when you have a child, when you start having your children, your focus has to be to your kids. So I don't want anyone to think that I didn't think that that was right. Of course it was right. But he got nasty. The nastiness I don't think is right. You can say, yeah, Mom, take that train, and I'll meet you there and I'll pick you up, because the train station was near his house. So he didn't have to drive all the way into Boston. Great. I kept telling him I could do it. So the first time I did it, he calls me on the phone. I'm just ready to get off at the station, which is the station he told me to get off of. Oh, you're going to get off there? And I'm like, well, didn't you tell me to? And he's like, oh.
I just want you to know, I didn't do anything with this video. He already knew the other woman. 8-month-old granddaughter. Is the other woman the mother of, huh? I did nothing. I don't know if she cut something out. I don't know. I'm lost and confused right now. I'm completely lost and confused.
Yeah, but there's another station. I was wrong. And I'm going to have to drive 10 minutes farther. And he said it real disgustingly. And I said, I'm sorry. It came out, I'm sorry. I'm making him drive 10 minutes farther from his house. So that's it was such a switch over, if you will, from, oh, you can't do this, I need to protect you, from getting lost, to, now I have to drive 10 minutes farther. And I understand he's a father now, but it was little things like that, that made me realize, just little things that I look back on now. I didn't notice at the time or think at the time that this was part of an estrangement situation, but it certainly was, so, okay, fast forward another maybe 2 years. Okay, 3 years maybe. I'm living in the same area he is, okay, about 30 minutes away. But COVID, of course, was going on. I hadn't seen him. I hadn't seen anybody in his family, including him or my grandchild. There was another grandchild now, for a couple of years. I mean, he was at a point where I think he just didn't want to see me anymore. And I felt it. He was using COVID. I mean, people.
Is anyone feeling that word salad kind of thing kicking in? Like she's just bounced around. It's so far from, did my irresponsibility cause the estrangement? Maybe she'll get there. I doubt it. I mean, obviously, there's a ton of history, a ton of foundational things that she's in denial of, that he, it sounds like, has confronted her over. She's not going to heal those wounds. And now in adulthood, she is at a minimum high maintenance enough where it's just not worth the work, at least at a minimum, right? Like there's so many moving pieces in here, and yet not really all at the same time. Maybe at some point he was looking for his mother to be his mother and be the adult in the room and be responsible and be, just the adult in the room instead of having to take care of her. And kids who grow up with parents who drink, and we don't know when her drinking was on and off and all of that. She's really vague about all of that. Children who grow up with parents who drink grow up taking care of their parents. They're highly, 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 highly parentified. And then that would become a very big trigger point if it doesn't get rectified. Understandably so. And here you have somebody who doesn't really self-reflect. She looks like she's going to, and then she throws them under the bus, who isn't taking accountability in any, well, she's just not. She's telling stories really to make you feel bad for her and draw you away from the fact that she did things that were really neglectful and harmful for her son throughout his life. even this woman thing, I'm still stuck on that. So he married this woman. Like the way you're putting that, the other woman, that's the mother of your granddaughters. And the sourness of that, would you want her around your children if she, like, addressed you that way, even at a distance like that? Of course not. Because if you have disdain right here in a video where you can control how you're speaking and stuff, and for the most part she does so, what's that going to translate over onto? What does that look like at Christmas dinner? Oh, yeah, you pass the potato. You know what I mean? Like nuances, things that children see and learn about relationships between the adults and what love looks like, what behaviors are normalized. Like there's so many moving pieces in here.
We're going out. I mean, it didn't last that long, even in Massachusetts, even in a blue state. All that being shut up and not going out, even the masks, people weren't even wearing masks anymore in my area. So just to let you know that, it wasn't all about COVID, but I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, and it was Christmas Eve, and I don't know if I called him or he called me, but I was so happy to talk to him. So earlier that day, I had told him about, when I was on the phone with him, I had told him about this experience that I had had earlier that day, which again was Christmas Eve. I had taken a walk, didn't have a car, and we had snow on the ground. And I wore good boots. So I'm traveling and I'm walking, and I misstepped off this. You couldn't see where the parking lot ended or where the grass started, and I was going to the store, and I ended up falling into a snowbank. And I mean, I fell into a snowbank. I was up to practically past my hips, almost to my waist, in a snowbank. And the snow was partly frozen, and I had fallen into it. And I was near the parking lot because I could see the cars parked in this strip mall, which is where I was going. And there's a young guy that got out of his car, and he's talking on the phone, and it seemed like he's looking right at me. And I'm going, help, because I am literally stuck in snow. And he literally turned away from me, kept talking on the phone, turned back, looked at me, got off the phone, got back in his car and drove away. And I am like laying there like, oh my goodness. How could somebody do that? So I was practically in tears. Now, the weather too, it was getting dark. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon, which is kind of dusk at Christmas time for New England. It had been a cloudy day. And I thought, I got to get out of here. By now, I've been in there like 10, 15 minutes. Nobody's going by. Nobody else is parking there that I can flag down. And I'm looking up at the sky like, oh my God, I got to get out of this snowbank. So I start with my legs and I start pushing and digging into the snow. Luckily, I had gloves, and I got like a big enough area around my foot that I could pull one foot out. And I worked on the other one, and I got the other foot out, and I got up, and I was like, oh my God. Of course, I got my Dunkin' Donuts coffee, which is where I had gone, had to have a Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Hey, it's Christmas Eve. Got to live a little, right? So I got my coffee, got my little bag, which probably had a donut in it. And I, tried to grab as much pride as I had left and walk home. So when I got home and I got all warm and toasty and everything was fine, and I think he did call me. And so I'm telling him the story, and he didn't skip a beat. He said, well, what do you expect? He was, some guy isn't going to stop for a crazy woman to help her. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Why? He goes, well, I wouldn't help a woman out of the snow. And I thought, what kind of person would not help somebody that was stuck in the snow? I just don't understand that. I don't understand that. So I didn't know.
It's a characterization. So all of that to create a character around her son of a story we didn't hear, that we don't know what he said, how he said it. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry you had to live through that with me. I hope you fast forwarded it or like put it on speed. I was like, where is she going with this?
So I didn't know what to think about that. I was happy for the phone call. At least I got to talk to my son that day. It was Christmas Eve. Like I said, I hadn't seen him in person for a couple of years. So I got off the phone and I just thought I would.
By the way, you know something that COVID did, right? Because of not being able to or not having to, depending on the case, right? Depending on where you were in the world and all the things, not having to visit your parents. I mean, there were a lot of estrangements that were born of and not because of. There's a difference. COVID, because there were a lot of adult offspring who were like, oh, I don't have to go. Oh, I don't have. Oh, let me do a little online therapy now. Oh, my life is more peaceful. I didn't know how this was impacting me, and now I do. And so I always say, if a person's life is better without you, there's a reason. And so there were a lot of estrangements that happened because adult offspring didn't feel that need to go over to their parents' house and, be as active in connection to them. And it created its own kind of distance where people started to gain that contrast of, wow, I don't feel like shit all the time. What was the thing that was making me feel like shit, or the person in that, or relationship, or whatever it is? So there were a lot of, I think there was an uptick, not because they shouldn't have happened in the first place. COVID didn't cause it, but because the relationships were, dysfunctional, abusive, whatever description fits around that, to the point where it was like COVID just gave people that opportunity to have that distance and to realize I can just keep this distance afterwards. And that's kind of sounding like a little bit of also what probably happened here. He didn't have to pick up the pieces of his mother anymore.
I'd be ashamed to tell a friend that my son actually said that. It was, to me,
you would be ashamed to tell a friend that, but you're not ashamed to tell the entire internet that. Come on.
To me, it wasn't right, but that's him. And soon afterwards, the phone call stopped. And like I said, to this day here, which is 2025, September 2025, I have not heard my son's voice in about I've lost track. Probably 4 to 5 years. I haven't heard his voice. He won't, I don't call anymore because he won't answer. And the texts, we know how the texts have gone. So no. So, I'm in pretty much full estrangement, except for that he wanted me. And I truly believe this. He just felt like he wanted something from me, which was the blanket that he wanted me to make for his daughter. And I don't believe that I'm going to say this right now. I don't believe that it was an olive branch. A lot of you made comments and that, were very hopeful. And I wanted to believe that so bad. I don't believe that anymore. It was a means to an end for him. I don't think he would even tell her that it was me that made it, because, then she's going to say, well, where is she? Well, why don't we see her? Where is her? This was a whole nother.
So I didn't watch the whole video about the blanket. I watched enough of it to know, though, that at some point they weren't yet completely estranged. He asked her to make, according to her, a blanket for his daughter. I think she knits. Is that what she said? I think she knits. And I guess people were commenting, and it sounds like that was an olive branch. It does sound to me that it was something to build connection over. and he was still in contact with her, and she's trying to make it seem like you just used me to get the blanket. I'm sure he can get blankets handmade with a lot less emotional distress and work around it. Whether or not it was an olive branch, it was an opportunity for you to show up as the parent in the room instead of the one who needed their emotional needs to get met. This is a backwards relationship. It's pretty clear to me. And the way that she paints herself the victim of everyone, the way that she's smear campaigning him, I mean, and her inconsistencies. There's parts where I think she's downright lying, and it just she is an emotionally unreliable person to have in a person's life. That's what strikes me about her. So as her son, who has daughters with a woman she obviously doesn't like, why would you have a relationship there? You had an opportunity. You had this thing that he wanted from you for your grandchildren, his granddaughters, that was showing you that he wanted to build some sort of connection, and you're just emotionally unable to do that because you haven't gotten the help that you need to see that his perspective is not just his perspective, it's his actual experience. You put him through things that you owe him healing over. And minimally, as an adult in an adult relationship, not making him continue to be, responsible for your well-being. There's stuff in there, right?
This is a whole nother thing too. And again, I know I'm going to get comments that I'm, telling you my side. I can only tell you my side. I can't tell you his side because I'm not him. It's not, I got a few comments that people were saying that I was being so narcissistic that I'm telling you my version. I can't tell you his version. Maybe he has a whole nother version of it. I don't know. Or conveniently, I think he would say, oh, I don't remember that. Convenient. I don't remember that. But I remember it.
Really? Because I'm pretty sure you've said in other videos that he said certain things to you over the phone and has texted you certain things about his version, but you can't tell that. But you can smear campaign him, but you can't tell his version. Uh-huh. Sure. Okay.
Like he would say, oh, I don't remember that. Convenient. I don't remember that. But I remember it. And I know what happened. And I know what was said and how it was said because...
Okay, you're seeing the look on my face. It has nothing to do with her. And I somehow managed to hear what she just had to say. And you can think I'm crazy. Well, think what you're going to think. Think whatever you're going to think. I was just saying how today's the anniversary of my biological father's death. And I believe he shows up in birds. There are things that happen with him. He has turned on water, okay, and kept me safe. Like there's things that have happened that I'm full on believing are my father. And I've been living in this flat since January 29th, because I moved in on my birthday. And I'm in this window constantly either making videos or on with clients. This is where my desk is set up. This has never happened before. A bird literally just flew up and over the window. And I'm like, holy shit. So, hi, Dad. I know I had a look on my face, so I thought, let me explain what just happened. It is what it is. I believe what I believe, and nobody's going to hijack that. Yeah, that was quite something.
It's ingrained in my brain. When your kid says something that sounds harsh, you kind of remember that, You remember the good and you remember the bad. But anyway, so I know my irresponsibility has maybe made my son a little more ambitious. That can't be a bad thing, right? I know he wanted to provide for his family better than I had provided for him.
So let me give myself credit that my son became ambitious because of what I put him through. So she's either the victim or the hero. What does that sound like? I am losing my mind. I'm losing my mind.
And again, we lived in a small town most of his growing up years. And we lived in one of the few, very few apartment complexes. They were townhomes, but they had other regular apartments too, but very few. Most of it was old houses that were single family homes, lakeside homes. But there was a whole nother area of this town that they called them McMansions. That's what everyone called them. They were very large homes, but they all looked pretty identical to each other. And they were going up like crazy. And my son had friends who actually lived in some of these homes. And they were big and spacious and beautiful, you know. And I think there was some status issues going on. My son's friend's mother, who also lived in our apartment complex, made a remark one day that we weren't considered as good because we were apartment people. And I said, what? Apartment people? I grew up in a city. There was no such thing as apartment people and house people. But she said, yeah, we're apartment people and we don't rate very well. And I often wonder over the years, I mean, to me, I wasn't going to deal with any of that. I thought it was nonsense. But I wonder if my son maybe felt it, you know, maybe he did. You know, you move to a place like that, wanting to give your children a better life, better schooling, less crime, and you end up creating a situation that they feel less than, maybe. And
you did the best you could, and they couldn't be grateful for it and couldn't see how well they were living. Like it has such a thing behind it. Could it be? I don't know. I'm just guessing, pulling things out of air, that your son, never mind the McMansions, went to other people's homes and saw different dynamics and realized that not everybody gets their cable and their electric cut off. Not everybody has a parent who maybe forgets to buy food because she was drunk. You know, could it be, and I don't know that she was, I'm just saying there's a lot that I think is being omitted here. Could it be that your son saw other people living differently and it denormalized how he was living with you? Could it be? I don't know. Could it be that it was less about finance and the size of your house or apartment and more about the environment? So I relate to the apartment people, although, I mean, they didn't say that. I used to live in Celebration, Florida. You can Google it. It's the town that Disney built. And most of the time that I lived there, remember 4 places, I lived in apartments. And actually, half of the time. So I lived in 2 houses and 2 apartments. And all were very, very, very nice, right? And remember, I only got evicted once. I'm making peace with that in my brain. And that was from an apartment. There was a kind of thing, because it was a pretty affluent neighborhood, of like the people who lived in a certain part of Celebration were the wealthier people, but nobody really like looked down on someone who lived in a condo or an apartment or even a garage apartment. I lived in a garage apartment at one point. Like nobody was like, there just wasn't that thing between the kids, or it just wasn't a thing. Um, and I'm like, she's got me a little I'm a little discombobulated. Let me own where I am with all of this deflection of, you know, this and that and the other. Did my kids know that we had less money than other people did? Of course they fucking did. I mean, you had people who were living in $10 million houses and we were living in an apartment, not unlike a lot of other people in, varying degrees within that neighborhood. Was it ever an issue? No, not even a little bit. Because kids don't internalize that sort of thing unless something's causing them to. What kids are most concerned about is, are they loved? Are they safe? Do they have their needs met? Are they hungry? Are they not hungry? That sort of thing. And the proof is in the pudding, because I'm actually, as I'm thinking about this, when I rented the garage apartment, there was a point in time where I was living in a house that I just couldn't afford. Like, I bit off more than I could chew. So not all my financial instability was about the way that I spent, although that was a very huge part of it. Some of it was living beyond my needs, my means as well, and thinking that I could swing something that then I was like, no, I actually can't. Didn't think that through, sort of thing. And I said to my kids at one point when we were moving from a house, getting ready to downsize, I was like, look, guys, I can't carry this anymore. I just can't do it. And they were between the ages of uh, maybe 11 and 15, something like that. Maybe bigger than that, 9 and 15. Oh, they were all old enough to be consulted. Imagine that. I consulted my children before I made a decision that involved them. I know, it's fucking batshit crazy, isn't it? And I said to them, listen, we have two choices. We either move one neighborhood over and we can be in a house again, and you all have your own rooms and space and all the things, or we move into a garage apartment, which is going to be smaller, which means shared rooms and things like that. These garage apartments aren't like one room over a garage, by the way. They're quite nice. What would you prefer and why? Let's talk this through. What ended up happening was the garage apartment, because all three of my kids said, we'd rather be in the neighborhood where we can walk to see our friends, and we don't have to wait for you to be able to give us a ride or any of those things, and we can walk home from school and that sort of thing. We don't care about sharing the room. We'd rather be in this situation than that situation. And so that's what I did, and they were always and have been and still do appreciate that decision. They weren't focused on what the size of the apartment was, whether they had less or more than somebody else. They were focused on their environment, because that's usually what kids focus on. It's that thing of, they're not going to remember if you bought them 10,000 things. They're going to remember the time that you spent with them and, how you connected to them more than anything else. And so she's like, oh, the apartment people. No, you were not connected to your son as a parent to your child. You just weren't. And that's probably going to go a long way if you could own that. Although I doubt that you have a chance to have him back in your life. Just, I mean, by virtue of these videos that you've made where you smear campaign him, you disclose information about him that's not yours to disclose. Like, you've put the nails in the coffin and you don't even recognize it. If you don't recognize that, how are we to assume in any way, and I don't like assuming, that you recognize any of his experiences that you put him through? Yeah. Okay, let's play this out.
And my son, he was very proud of himself. I was very proud of him too, when he bought his first home, and it's a beautiful home. I do think the houses they were looking at were smaller than the one they actually ended up getting. And, I wonder to this day if it's hard for them, if they are together, which I have no clue whether they are or not, if that is an issue of, being able to pay their bills. But that is none of my business, and I know that, and it doesn't keep me up at night, because they're adults and they'll figure it out. And I have enough problem, paying my bills with inflation the way it is. But, so there's that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure there's other things that have happened through the past, or maybe things that I have done or not done, that have affected my son. But he would have to tell that part of it, because I think there's things that I'm not aware of. And he's not here to speak for himself. I wish he were. I really wish he were. Nothing would make me happier than to have him sitting next to me, telling me and telling you about my shortcomings. It would hurt, but I think I'd be so happy to have him sitting next to me. I wouldn't care.
Telling everyone about my shortcomings. Words matter. Sharing with everyone what his experiences were. There's a difference, right? Throwing me under the bus so that you could all feel sorry for me, or sharing with everyone, you know, what his feelings were and are around, you know, the falling apart of our relationship. And I don't really know. You shared a lot that tells us a lot. So interesting.
I wouldn't care, you know. But I'm a dreamer in some ways, right? Because I can't see that ever happening. So I guess that's all I have for you today. I hope you're all doing well. I hope the weather is getting crisp and fall-like, and you're enjoying it wherever you're living. And please leave a comment below. Please like and subscribe. It helps our family, I'll call us a family, grow. And I love you all. And please do something nice for yourself today, because you deserve it. And I'll see you in my next one. God bless.
Well, that was a range of emotions for me. Maybe for you too. I really, any Hoosie, don't have anything else to say about her. I think I'm going to actually, I'll take her advice and do something nice for myself today, because yeah, it's so funny how I didn't clock the date. Not funny, but you know, lack of better word. So yeah, I think I'm just going to give myself a little bit of love, and I hope you do the same, and I shall see you soon.